Hello students, I welcome you to the discussion of solution of previous year NTHE paper 2020 Engineering paper 3 Chemistry. I am Mohit Kumar Singh, Faculty Chemistry with Akash plus Baiju. Now here we are going to discuss this NTHE mock test, and in this mock test we are not going to discuss only the pattern of questions, we are also going to see the quality of questions. Now let's first talk about the pattern of questions. So here first we have 5 questions, those are single correct. Then we have 2 multiple correct questions, that is more than 1 correct. Then we have 2 paragraph type questions, and then we have a assertion reason question followed by a matrix match. So we are going to discuss each and every question in detail, and I request you to follow the pattern that I used to solve the question. Now let's begin the first question of NTHE paper. So question number 12. The question says sodium oxide when dissolved in water forms a solution sodium hydroxide. Obviously sodium oxide is a basic oxide, reacts with water and form a base sodium hydroxide. Now what is the molarity with respect to NaOH of the final solution formed if 2.7 gram of sodium oxide is mixed with water such that the final volume is 200 ml. Now here first we need to know the reaction when Na2O, that is my sodium oxide, reacts with water. Now we know Na2O reacts with water and forms NaOH, and if I do the balancing then we get 2 here. Now we need to know the molarity of NaOH formed, but before knowing the molarity we need to know the number of moles of NaOH, and for knowing moles of NaOH I need to know the moles of Na2O. Now here we have 2.7 gram of Na2O. So if I have 2.7 gram of Na2O, what is the number of moles of Na2O? Now here we have 2.7 grams. Mass of sodium is 23 into 2 times 46 plus 16, that is 62 is the molar mass of sodium oxide. So this is number of moles, that is 2.7 divided by 62. This is the initial moles. Initially this is absent, but finally this will be consumed completely and we get 2 times 2.7 divided by 62. So this is moles of NaOH. Now what is molarity? Molarity is simply number of moles of NaOH divided by volume of solution in liter. Now moles is 2 into 2.7 divided by 62 and volume is 200 ml. Now if volume is 200 ml in liter, it will be 0.2. Now we have to do the calculation here, and if we calculate we get 0.435 molar solution. So the answer of my question is question number 3, that is 0.435 molar. Moving on to my next question, that is question number 13. Now question number 13 says which of the following gas among the given diffuses fastest at similar conditions of T and P. Now what is the rate of diffusion? You all have studied about diffusion, that if my gas is escaping from a hole, then what is the rate of that diffusion? So rate of diffusion is basically dependent upon the molar mass, and how it is dependent? It is square root of inversely proportional to the molar mass. It means the one which is having highest molar mass will diffuses at a lower rate. Yes, this is correct. For that we need to know the molar masses. For example, ammonia, the mass of ammonia is 17. Mass of CO2 is, this is 12 plus 32, it is 44. Mass of CO is 28 and mass of Cl2 is Cl is 35.5, so this is 71. So I can say one thing, that here the lowest molar mass is for ammonia. If the molar mass is lowest for ammonia, it means the rate of diffusion of ammonia is fastest. Okay, so the answer of my question is option number 1, that is ammonia. Moving on to the next question, that is question number 14. Now this is basically a thermodynamics question. You can see 500 gram of nitrogen gas at 300 Kelvin are held by a piston under 20 atm. So here what we have a container in which, just assume, we have 500 gram of N2, because it is saying nitrogen gas, so we have to take N2. Now this is held under a piston and the pressure is 20 atm. The pressure is suddenly released to 10. Now I can say one thing, that here my P1 is basically 20 and my P2 is 10 atm. Now here we have mentioned that the pressure is suddenly released. In thermodynamics you have to know the meaning of each and every word, because they say a lot about the question. Now here this suddenly released means that the process is irreversible. It is not reversible, because if it is reversible, because here we are saying that it is released suddenly to 10 atm and the gas is allowed to expand adiabatically, that in adiabatic condition, and if it is reversible, then we can use PV gamma is equals to constant, but here we cannot use those relations, because here my process is irreversible. Now the thing is, I know initial pressure, I know final pressure, I know initial temperature, which is 300 Kelvin, but I do not know the final temperature, that is T2, because in adiabatic there is expansion and the work whatever has been done is on the expense of internal energy, or internal energy has to be consumed for doing that particular work. It means the internal energy has decreased, and if internal energy has decreased, then it means my temperature has been reduced. So what will be the final temperature? Obviously this is lesser than 300 Kelvin, but what it is, how to calculate that? That is our first task. And then what we have to calculate? We have to calculate the delta S system, that is the entropy change of my system for this process. So let's begin solving this. So here we know that in thermodynamics we have different laws, and my first law says that delta E is equals to Q plus W. Now in adiabatic process we know that Q is equals to 0. There is no heat transfer between system and surrounding, so this term is 0. It means my delta E is equals to W, and delta E can be written as NCV T2 minus T1. Similarly W can be written as minus P, because it is irreversible. I can write it as P external V2 minus V1. Now this is NCV T2 minus T1 is equals to minus, now what is P external? That is the final pressure against which the volume has been changing. So the final pressure is P2, and V2, because here we have not given any volume, not the initial volume nor the final volume. So let's convert this volume in terms of temperature and pressure. So V2 can be written as nR T2 by P2 minus nR T1 by P1. Now here n will get cancelled out. So what we are left with is CV. If I take R as common and divide it here, it becomes CV by R. T2 minus T1 is equals to minus P2, T2 by P2 minus T1 by P1. Now let's put the values here. CV has been given to us and it is 20.8. It is 20.8 divided by 8.314 T2, that is the final temperature. We need to calculate this, and T1 has been given to us, that is 300 is equal to minus 10. Here the temperature is T2, we do not know that. It is P2 is 10 minus 300 divided by 20. Now here we have only one variable, that is T2, and if I calculate my temperature from here, then this T2 comes out to be 257.16 Kelvin. So this is the final temperature. As I have told you, the temperature has been decreased. Now after that, we need to calculate delta S. And delta S system, you know the formula, it is NCV ln T2 by T1 plus nR ln V2 by V1. Now here we do not know the volume relationship, but we know that V2 by V1 can be written as T2 by T1 dot P1 by P2. And if I substitute this here, we will get NCV ln T2 by T1 plus nR ln T2 by T1 dot P1 by P2, or if you solve this, the equation will be reduced to NCP ln T2 by T1 plus nR ln P1 by P2. Now the question is very simple. You have to put only the values of these T2, T1, P1, P2. So let's do that. Now here n again, that is 1. Now here we need to know n. And for n, we have been given the mass of nitrogen, that is 500 grams. So this is 500 divided by mass of nitrogen, that is 28. Cp is what? Cp is 29.114. This is Cv plus R. Cv is 20.8 plus 8.314. We get 29.114 ln. T2 we have calculated just now, 257.16, and this is T1 300 plus again n is 500 divided by 28 into R 8.314, and this is ln P1, this is 20 divided by 10. Now on solving this, we get 22.80 joule per Kelvin. Yes, this question is a bit lengthy, but again you can learn many things from this question. So the answer of this question is option number 2, that is 22.80 joule per Kelvin. Now my next question is question number 15. The value of speed of an electron in third orbit of Be3 plus ion is. Now for JEE perspective also, this Bohr model is very important, and we know we get radius, velocity, energy from this Bohr model. Now the formula of velocity that we have obtained is simply 2.18 into 10 to the power 6 z divided by n meter per second. Now the question is, what is this z and what is this n? Z basically represents the atomic number here, or the number of protons in my nucleus, because here we are talking about only unielectronic species that are having single electron, but in nucleus there can be one or more than one protons. And here n is the principal quantum number, or you can say it is the shell number in simple terms, that which orbit I am talking about. So here we are talking about the third Bohr orbit. So n is equal to 3, and what about z? What is z for Be3 plus? So we have hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium. Z is equals to 4. Now what you have to do? You have to apply the formula only, that V is equals to 2.18 into 10 to the power 6. Z is 4 divided by n meter per second, and when I calculate this is 2.906 into 10 to the power 6 meter per second. So here the answer is 2.906 into 10 to the power 6. Let's see the options: 2.9 into 10 to the power 6, 3.5 into 10 to the power 6, 5, and 1.6 into 10 to the power 6. We can see here that the answer is option number 1, that is 2.9 into 10 to the power 6. Now moving on to the next question, that is question number 16. The maximum number of radial nodes are present in which of the following orbitals? Now here you can see we have different y-axes. Now first we have radial probability distribution curve, second we have psi r versus r curve, then we have again psi r, that is radial wave function versus r curve, and then we have radial probability density versus r curve. Now in all these cases there is one common thing, that the points at which it becomes 0 from the start basically reflects the number of radial nodes, because these graphs are for my radial functions. So these points basically represent the radial nodes, and here it is not touching, so we do not get a node here, but we are getting 3 radial nodes from here, 3 radial nodes. Similarly, in the second case you can see that there is this node. If somebody asks you that which is this orbital, this is basically 2s, because this is for my s orbital, the graph is coming from upside and there is one node in 1s. We know there is no radial node, but this is 2s and the number of radial node is 1. Then what about this? Here and here we have 2 radial nodes, and in this case again this one and this one, that is 2 radial nodes. So in which case you are getting the maximum number of radial nodes? You are getting maximum radial nodes in option 1. It means the answer of this question is option number 1. Now we have question number 17. Now question number 17 is, HOMO is highest occupied molecular orbital and U and G represents unjarred and jarred symmetry respectively. Which of the following diatomic molecule is correctly matched with HOMO, that is highest occupied molecular orbital? Now the thing is that my jarred means that if I take the center point and we see the inversion, then we get same sign along that. Whereas in unjarred we do not find this symmetry and we get different signs. Let me explain this with the help of the molecular diagrams or the molecular orbitals of these particular molecules. For example, let's say we have B2. Now in boron, how many electrons are there? We have hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium and boron. Boron contains 5, but in B2 we have 10, and its atomic orbitals are like this. This is sigma 1s, this is sigma star 1s, this is sigma 2s, this is sigma star 2s, and then we have pi 2px and pi 2py, which contains the electrons. And these are basically bonding molecular orbital. So my HOMO is this one, that is pi bonding molecular orbital. And in pi bonding molecular orbital we have something like this. So here, if this is the internuclear axis, we have something like this. This is positive and let's say this is negative. And this is the center point. Now if I move to different side along this point, you can see that here we have positive, here we have negative. It means this is basically unjarred. So its HOMO is unjarred and it is pi bonding. So you can see from here that this is B2 is pi and it is unjarred. Second is, what about C2? Now in C2 again, the only difference is in C2, this pi bonding contains 2 electrons. So the same thing, the molecular orbital is same, and that's why this is again C2 pi unjarred. Now what about O2? Now in O2 this is just reverse. Initially we have sigma 1s, sigma star 1s, sigma 2s, sigma star 2s, sigma 2p z, pi to px, pi to py, pi star to px, pi star to py. So these are the HOMO of my O2, because we know here 1 electron is present, because in O2 we have total 16 electrons, 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, 2, this is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, finally 15 and 16. So this is pi antibonding. Now when pp orbitals interact in an antibonding or out of phase manner, then we get something like this. This is plus, minus, this is minus, plus. So this is out of phase bonding or the anti-bonding MO. This is anti-bonding MO, and along this point you can see that these molecular orbitals basically represents the Jarrett symmetry. So O2 pi Jarrett, yes, this statement is correct. And in case of F2, you can see that F2 basically contains 2 electrons in this pi antibonding molecular orbital. So this is, here we have sigma and unjarred. No, this is incorrect, because here also HOMO is my pi antibonding molecular orbital, just like O2. So this is incorrect. So answer of my question is 1, 2 and 3. Moving on to my next question, which of the following among the given has positive value of electron affinity? Now we all have studied electron gain enthalpy, that is the energy released when an electron is added to the outermost orbital of an isolated gaseous atom. Now electron affinity is basically negative of that quantity. It means those which releases energy or for which we get a negative electron gain enthalpy will have a positive values of electron affinities. Now if I take electron gain enthalpy, then the NS2 configuration, the NS2 NP3 configuration and NS2 NP6 configuration, these are basically the stable configurations, and in these configurations if I try to add that extra electron, I need to give energy, and in that case energy is not released. It means electron gain enthalpy for these configurations is basically positive. It means the electron affinities for these cases is negative. So positive value will be obtained for other atoms apart from these. Now beryllium is basically NS2 configuration. It means beryllium is having negative electron affinity. Boron NS2 NP1, okay, this has positive electron affinity. Carbon again NS2 NP2. Nitrogen on the other hand is having NS2 NP3 configuration, so negative electron affinity. Then oxygen NS2 NP4, NS2 NP5, NS2 NP1, and again magnesium is having NS2 configuration. So from here I can say that first option is correct. Both are having positive electron affinities. Beryllium, magnesium and nitrogen all have negative electron affinity, so this will not be the option. Oxygen, fluorine and aluminium, yes, this is correct. again beryllium and nitrogen, one is having NS2, one is having NS2NP3, so their electron affinities are negative. So again this is incorrect, so my answer is 1 and 3. Moving on to my next question, question number 19, and that is basically paragraph based questions. Now here the paragraph that is given to us is the emission spectrum of hydrogen atom and like species were studied by several scientists. All lines in UV region were studied by Lyman. All lines in visible region were studied by Balmer, and lines of longer wavelength were studied by Paschen, Brackett and Piffin. Now answer the following questions. So basically this is about the emission lines that are obtained in hydrogen atom. Now here question number 19 says, which electronic transition in an ion emits light of wavelength equal to the longest wavelength emitted in the Paschen series of hydrogen atom? Now here there are 2 or 3 important parts. One is Paschen series of hydrogen atom. Now in Paschen series we know that in Lyman electron comes from any orbital to 1. So n to 1. Similarly in Balmer it comes to 2. Then Paschen. Now what is Paschen series of hydrogen atom? That electron will come to n equal to 3. Now here it says that it must be the longest wavelength emitted. Longest wavelength means minimum energy transition, and minimum energy transition to Paschen series in hydrogen atom is from 4. That if the electron is coming from just the above orbital, that if this is 1, 2, 3 and 4, then this transition is having minimum energy in Paschen series. Other transitions like 5 to 3, 6 to 3, they are having higher energy than this. So this is the transition in hydrogen atom. But we need to know that if my transition is in He plus. Now this is a trick you can remember, that transition or the wavelength of a transition will be same. If in hydrogen the transition is from 4 to 3, then in helium my transition is from 8 to 6. You have to multiply only the value of Z. For example, just assume that if it is not helium, let's say this is lithium 2 plus, then what you have to do? The transition having the same wavelength is from, you have to multiply Z value by these. For example, 3 into 4 is 12 and 3 into 3 is 9. So transition from 12 to 9 is having same wavelength as 4 to 3 in hydrogen. So here the answer is option number 2, as you can see from here. Now after that, the next question says, what electronic transition in hydrogen spectrum would have same wavelength as the transition n equal to 4 to n equal to 2 in He plus ion? Now again the same concept as we have seen earlier, that if in He plus my transition is from 4 to n equal to 2, and if I want to know that what transition in hydrogen will have same wavelength, what we have to do? Just divide it by 2, because here when we are giving transition in hydrogen we are multiplying it for the other ions. But if other ions are giving and I want to calculate for hydrogen, then you have to divide it by that Z. So this becomes n equal to 2 to n equal to 1. But if you want to know that how this has come, you can see that lambda 1 upon lambda is basically given by RH Z square 1 upon N1 square minus 1 upon N2 square. And here for hydrogen I can say my Z is 1. This is 1 square. Let's say the transition is from 2 to n equal to 1. Then n1 is 1 and this is 2 here. Similarly, this is for hydrogen. Let's take it for He plus. Then this becomes 1 upon lambda is RH. Z is 2 for helium. And this is 1 upon 2 square, because I am saying that the transition 2 to 1 is same as that of 4 to 2 in helium. So we are just checking here or verifying that whatever we are talking about is basically correct or not. So this is RH, this becomes 3 by 4, and you can see that lambda is 4 upon 3 RH, that is Rydberg constant. So here we can see RH 4, this is 1 by 4 minus 1 by 16, which is RH 4, this is 4 minus 1 divided by 16, or this becomes RH 3 by 4, or you can say it becomes that lambda is 4 upon 3 RH. This is same as that of hydrogen. You can verify this for lithium, Be 3 plus also. So the answer is transition 2 to n equal to 1. Now the next question is again the assertion and reason type. Now in assertion and reason, let's talk about assertion first. XeF2 is a polar covalent molecule. Now what is the hybridization of XeF2? We know in XeF2 we have 2 bond pairs and 3 lone pairs. Now as we have 2 bond pair and 3 lone pairs, what is the hybridization? Hybridization is sp3d, that is trigonal bipyramidal. Now in trigonal bipyramidal, what are the best positions to put my atoms? That is at the axial position. So this is XC, FF, and my lone pairs are present on the equatorial position and it is linear in shape. Now the dipole moment of this is in this direction and dipole moment of this is in this direction. So my overall dipole moment is what? It is 0. It means my molecule is non-polar, but here it says it is polar covalent. It means my assertion is incorrect or it is a false statement. Then my reason is Xe atom is sp3 hybridized in XeF2. Yes, this is correct as I have seen here. So first is false and R is true. So the answer is 4. Now the last question of my Ekhthe mock test 3. The question is matrix match, which is match column 1 with column 2. Now in column 1 we have been given certain covalent compounds, and here we have been given their properties. What are their hybridizations, the percentage S character, their polar or non-polar, and the number of lone pairs. Let's do this one by one. So first talk about PCl5. Now there are various ways to calculate the hybridization. We know we can count the total number of valence electrons, like in phosphorus we have 5, in chlorine we have total 35, because 5 chlorine 7 valence electrons, so 7 into 5 is 35, so we have 40. You can divide it by 12, you can divide it by 8, 8 into 5 is 40, so the quotient here is 5. And if my quotient is 2, it represents sp, 3 represents sp2, 4 represents sp3, 5 represents sp3d, and 6 represents sp3d2, and similarly 7 is sp3d3. You can also call these 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as the steric number. Now as the steric number is 5 here, my hybridization becomes sp3d, and as I have 5 bonds, it means my central atom is having no lone pair. So lone pair on central atom is 0. Yes, this is correct. There are no lone pairs on central atom. Hybridization of central atom is sp3d. No, this is incorrect. Compound is non-polar. Now here PCl5 structure is trigonal bipyramidal. where these Cl and these Cl cancel out the dipoles of each other. Similarly, this dipole will cancel out the resultant dipole of these two PCl bonds. Therefore, overall dipole moment is 0 and the compound is non-polar. Yes, so P and R. Percentage S character is 25%, hybridization is sp3d. It means in 5 orbitals we have only one S. So this is 1 by 5 into 100. Does this represents 25%? No. So S will not be the option. Let's look for option number B, that is XCOF4. So here in XCOF4, you can calculate the hybridization. This is 8 plus 6 plus 7 into 4 is 28, and this becomes 28 plus 6, 34, and this is 42. If I divide it by 8, this is 8, 5, and then divide the remainder by 2, you will get 1 here. Now this 5 here represents the number of bond pairs, whereas this represents the lone pair. Now the positions are double bond O here and my fluorines here, and there is one lone pair on central atom. So option P is lone pair on central atom is 0. No. Hybridization of central atom is sp3d2. Yes, this is correct. Then is it non-polar? No. Here you can see the dipole moment of this and dipole moment of this are different, and that's why there is polarity in molecule. And finally, percentage S character is 25%. Now hybridization is sp3d2. And if hybridization is this, what can you say? You can say that the percentage S character is 1 by 6 into 100, and this is not equal to 25, so only Q is correct. Let's see for option C, that is XCF4. Yes, here xenon forms 4 bonds with fluorine, 4 electrons left. It means 2 lone pairs and 4 bond pairs. Now 4 bond pairs are arranged in the equatorial position, and these are present in axial. So this is like this, 4 fluorine, and lone pairs are far away from each other, that is at 180 degree. Now here the hybridization is again sp3d2. Polarity, as the molecule is symmetrical, that's why we can say it is non-polar, that each bond will cancel out the dipole moment of each other. Similarly, if we see the options, lone pair on central atom is 0, no. Hybridization, yes, it is sp3d2, so Q statement is there. Then is it non-polar? Yes, it is non-polar. And last option is percentage S character is 25%. No, we have seen earlier that it is 1 by 6 into 100. Now for ammonia, we know ammonia is pyramidal in shape. It is like this, having sp3 hybridization. So is there any lone pair on central atom? Yes. So P option is not there. Hybridization sp3d2? No, it is sp3. Is it non-polar? No, it is polar, because the dipole because of this adds up, and that's why we get high polarity in ammonia. And finally, percentage S character is 25%. Yes, total 4 orbitals and 1 is S. So this is 1 divided by 4 into 100, that is 25%. So for last option, we have only S. So my answer is A. This is PR, as we have seen here, that for A we have PR, for B we have Q, for C we have QR, and similarly for D we have only S. So this is my answer. So we are done with the discussion. Practice these questions, see the concepts in which you are lacking. So all the best. Thank you and goodbye.